welcome back to Off the Console, the hottest new podcast that's all about gaming, tech news, and anything nerdy. This week, we're covering the biggest news, including we have a special guest, Ross, with us, and we're going to be covering the movement Stop Killing Games and various other things, including the death of Anthem, which is another game that's dying off. PewDiePie is de-Googling and various other topics, but the big one today is Stop Killing Games, which I think most gamers would love to see happen. I'm joined with my co-hosts, Gardner and High Tech Lowlife. And like I mentioned, we have our special guest, Ross. And so...
what channel he's from?
Cursed Farms?
Cursed Farms, yeah. Yes. And so, first off, before we get into anything, what you've been doing or playing.
Okay, what I've been playing is the
Or
question?
what have you been doing? If you haven't been
I've been pretty
yeah.
much spending almost all free time on the Stop Killing Games campaign, but last month at one point I was playing games. So the last ones I was playing, which I haven't finished, were Steel Rising, which is kind of a Dark Souls clone, but has options to make it easier. It's like robots during the French Revolution, essentially.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yes.
And one game I wanted to play a long time that I finally am getting to is Forza Horizon 1, except emulated through Xenia.
Nice. I love Xenia. It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm pretty floored by
it. Nice. Gardner, what have you been up to?
I've been working on a super secret project that I can't really talk about, so I'm not going to. But I've also been playing Dome Keeper again. I got back into it. I don't know if you guys have played Dome Keeper, but
yeah,
it's like Dig Dug meets like a tower defense, and it's like, but with like some resource gathering and roguelike mechanics. It's so
surprisingly addictive.
Yeah,
it's really good. I picked it up this week, Gardner, based on your recommendation.
Cool.
Oh my god, I picked it up too.
Nice.
I've been playing that too. It's crazy, man.
Yeah, it's one of the most played games in my library now because I've picked it up recently, and man, it's actually, I have a CRT over here. It's like a old Sony Trinitron, and it has an HDMI port in the back. It's wild, and I've been playing Dome Keeper on that, and it's like, it just feels so like perfectly retro on that CRT.
I'm gonna need a video of that at some point, Gardner.
Oh yeah. Okay. I'll send you guys a video for sure.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. It is surprisingly really fun, and yeah, no, thanks for the recommendation on that. I've been vibe coding while playing that.
Nice.
Dude, it's not going to be my most played game because my most played game is Destiny 2 on my Steam account. It's followed by Starbound, then Terraria, which is crazy, man.
Is that
I could see.
What have you been doing, High Tech?
Oh man, I've been playing. I picked up some games like I mentioned before. Dome Keeper was one of them, but I've also been looking for games to pick up on the some random hidden gems. Because I own a lot of the really popular recommended games. So I've been trying to deep dive into the Steam sale to see if there's any weird little hidden gems that no one's ever talked about. Mostly because I'm bored, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm usually one that go after the most popular just because of time's sake, but sometimes when there's a gem, Dome Keeper is the perfect game for me. I do like all those elements quite a bit, and so it is really fun, and unlocking stuff is been fun because you get to learn about one, you start out with the shield, and then you can get into these defense creatures or whatever that will defend, and you get to build out different strategies, and I really like that. So it's a really fun game.
Yeah,
and it's
the mix of all the different things you can unlock is really cool too. Yeah. So you can get like you were saying, the shield, or you can upgrade the hull of the dome, or you can get new defenses, or even boosts for your mining abilities and assistance to do it too. So it's super great.
I mean, and then one of the diggers, miners or whatever they are, they can shoot orbs, and so you can shoot the orbs to then mine while you do other things.
Yeah.
It's fun, and
I don't think I found anything like that yet. Not
it's
yet,
one
at
of
least.
it's one of the ones you can unlock. But yeah, I spent a lot of time, and when so I'm still doing my vibe coding where I'm working with an AI to do certain parts of project I'm working on, and then I'm playing Dome. It is made it so that I can work on my project or play games a little bit more, which has been very refreshing. Like I beat Expedition 33 finally, put 80 hours into that.
Oh yeah, how'd you like it? The
I loved
ending.
it. I think that's the ending. I need to go back and because I think there's like multiple endings, but it
Oh,
saves right
shit.
before the ending. So I'm gonna go back and I 99% of the game. There's one boss left that's really hard, and we'll see if I do that. But that's like an after the game kind of boss. Love it. I recommend it to anyone that even is interested in, I guess, a good story that's just different. But because even if you don't like RPGs or turn-based RPGs and stuff like that, has a unique flair to it that makes it so it doesn't feel like you're just sitting around doing nothing, and it has elements that you have to work through. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. Before we get into it, make sure to subscribe to YouTube. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube before the end of the year, so make sure to do that. Also, follow us on podcast.subscribe2.me, our RSS feed, if you want to keep up to date with our audio podcast version of the show, and of course, follow us on the Fediverse.
Yeah, please go over to YouTube, like and subscribe, and this really helps us out in the YouTube algorithm as well.
Yes. Okay. Without further ado, let's go into the main topic today, which is stop killing games. Ross, I'll hand it off to you a little bit to describe what this is, and then we can just go back and forth and chat about this because I'm really excited.
Sure. Well, stop killing games. It's one of those things that's simple in concept, but it rapidly gets nuanced depending on how deep you go into it. The basic concept is we're trying to legally challenge or put an end to the practice of publishers selling you a game, not telling you when it's gonna shut down, then later permanently disabling it and keeping your money. And we found that's like, well, in my opinion, it's just the most hostile practice in the game industry towards consumers that there is. And it's led to more games being effectively destroyed than any other. So it's always just, I've always hated it. And the industry has been promising nothing but more. The industry has been promising more of it. So what's happened lately, though, is we've pursued this in many different ways. We've tried to do petitions to various governments on it. Also, there was an ideal game to bring this issue before consumer protection agencies in a few countries with the shutdown of the game, The Crew. But the big news right now is one of the most powerful options that we've pursued is it's called the European Citizens Initiative, where anyone who's a citizen of an EU country can sign this, and if it gets over 1 million signatures, then verified signatures, I should say, then starts a new stage where it gets brought before the EU Commission, and they can decide whether they're going to make new law on this and kind of work out the details based on the complaint and that sort of thing. Right now, the unfiltered count is over 1 million. I think it's over 1.1 million. So we're really in a good spot at the moment. However, anytime somebody makes a big mistake, or if there was a signature that wasn't valid, those get thrown out. So it's kind of a fog where we are exactly, but we for sure have a chance. It ends at the end of July, July 31st. So if I could say one thing, just if you are an EU citizen, like France, Germany, Belgium, wherever, and you can sign it, please consider doing so. I think it could actually change gaming history if we can pull this off for several reasons. But
I do have one question though. I believe you also had a separate petition for United Kingdom residents. Is that correct?
That's true. Yes, that's going on too. That one ends on July 14th. That one's cleared its threshold by a much safer margin. You can still sign it for safety. Yeah, it's like down below on that screenshot there at the bottom. But yeah, it says sign the UK petition. That one is much iffier. Like I'm not promising anything for. Yeah, the only thing I'm promising from that one is answers, because that's one thing about this practice that I described. You know, where they sell you the game, don't tell you when they're going to shut it down later, and keep your money. That more or less is nailed down in the United States, but in several other countries, basically EU ones, Australia, and to some extent the UK, it's not clear. This is a real gray area in the law where the laws were never written for this kind of situation. I've made the analogy to like when Uber first came on the scene. You know, governments weren't sure if this was a taxi service or are these employees or contractors. It's like the laws just weren't made for it. It's similar in games, which is one of the reasons this initiative, I think, has so much teeth to it, because we're coming in the middle of this confusion about what the law is and say, hey, can we just have some basic consumer rights on this to not have our purchases taken from us?
Yes, and so I do have one question, though. I believe one of the solutions you proposed was, of course, companies implementing end of life policies, correct?
Yeah. Here's where we start getting into the nuance a bit, because one thing. Oh, yeah, that's one thing I should mention. This is not retroactive. So if this were to pass, it doesn't mean every game that ever came out would be under these laws, because that would be kind of chaos. And it's not even an option anyway.
It makes sense, yeah.
But so this would start protecting if it passed, start protecting games from some point in the future onward, sort of break the cycle of this happening. For the end of life plans, it's actually worded kind of carefully, because we're not specifically saying, okay, you need to give us the server binaries at end of life, or you need to give us the source code or something. Because if we were to do that, then that could run afoul of copyright laws, because they're saying, wait, you're demanding their intellectual property. You can't do that. So what we're doing is instead asking for, once they shut it down and support, that they need to leave the game in a reasonably working state without having to connect to the publisher or affiliated parties. So that does two things. It leaves a lot of flexibility to the publisher how they want to deal with this. And two, since it's not specifically asking for any individual intellectual property, it keeps us on the safe side of copyright laws. And well, I guess the other thing is, realistically, they probably would release like server binaries or a modified version of it. But since we're not specifying exactly what they do, that it lets this work, essentially.
Right. Like keeping it more open-ended is going to make it easier to pass and then maybe fine-tune things later. But what about games? Like, let's say if World of Warcraft went down, how would you make something like that accessible like offline when it is fundamentally an online game? And would it be, because my thing is, if they released like server packages or something like make it so you could run your own server, you don't have to necessarily release the source code, but releasing even the binary, I don't know if would really violate any copyright if they can run their own servers. But I'm curious what your take on something like that is. How would World of Warcraft work if that was to go down?
World of Warcraft is complicated in at least two ways. One, we're going to try, but we're probably going to fail on trying to get protections for games that are a subscription service like that. The reason being is that more or less falls under a service under consumer law, because you're told exactly when it ends. You pay for 30 days or pay for 6 months, and then your access is cut. Well, that's how normal services work. You know, stuff like Netflix or insurance, you know, they tell you exactly when your access ends. So our only argument for World of War... Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, but you fundamentally buy the game first off, even though they do like to put in the terms and service that you're renting oftentimes nowadays. But you are buying a game, and then you're buying access to servers. So I think I'm curious if legally there's more ways that we could actually get something like a server binary, let's say at the end of the World of Warcraft just ends, like so that we could run our own servers.
My guess is if this were to go through, World of Warcraft would find some language to package the actual buying as just being like activation fee for the service or something like that. I think that's something they could wiggle out of for that particular case. But
Maybe,
what I was
but
going to say,
I bet
go ahead.
I bet early. Sorry, I keep on cutting you off. But
It's
I bet
all right, go
early
ahead.
games. I bet early games are not going to have that same clause. So they can't make up new rules now, and especially where I feel like the EU is definitely more consumer friendly. I'm just curious, and I don't mean to get too much bogged down to some of the nuances and stuff, but I really do want to see this movement succeed, but I also want to see it bring about fundamental changes to the industry, and so that's why I'm asking some of these other questions.
Yeah,
But
no,
yes,
it's
sorry,
fine. No,
continue.
as like I said, it gets nuanced fast. So for the subscription fee, there's no that might be muddier with buying the game and then having the subscription fee, but I think they could end up rewarding it before the law went into effect that's what it is. So they could kind of, cross their T's and dot their I's prior to them being affected by it. But the reason I think we'll fail on those is because, yeah, again, there's subscription fees, so they act like a regular service. So our only argument would basically be for cultural preservation. And the laws on that are far weaker than consumer rights laws. So that's why we've been pushing the consumer rights angle. But that
Okay.
said, there's there's some more to it. There's not that many players. I mean, not players, companies that are running subscription only games nowadays. It's kind of the old guard like that, like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy 14. I guess EVE Online has some, because they tried that in the mid 2000s with everybody trying to get on board that train, and almost all of them either died off or went free to play. So we did a count lately. There could be more, but I think we only found about 13 games out of just hundreds of online ones that were subscription only. So if we can only save, 97, 98% of games, that's still a pretty big win.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
there was something else you brought up. I should have written down notes about World of Warcraft with
No, it's okay.
Okay,
I'm just
you
bringing
brought
up World of Warcraft because it's a. Yeah, sorry.
the
Go.
offline part. Okay, for a game like World of Warcraft, I don't think offline would cut it because that is advertised as online multiplayer. Let's say it was covered for sake of argument.
Right.
An offline solution wouldn't do it because it was advertised as multiplayer, being able to connect to other people. So if it's all offline, well, that's a hell of a lot better than killing it off entirely, but that's still not really delivering what was advertised. So
Yeah.
in that case, you would need some form of private server functionality, I would think, where there's some way for people to connect to it. It just wouldn't be run by the publisher at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to mention, like, if you made like if publishers or the developers like changed World of Warcraft to being like an offline game, that would not be preserving the game itself, right? That would be a fundamentally different game at that point. So I think like having the private functionality, the private server functionality, like you were talking about, Ross, is probably the best bet for an online game like that, right?
Yeah, it depends on the game. I'm struggling to think of one offhand, but there probably are some because they usually get the DRM removed by end of life. But let's say it was a single player only game, but that it still needed to connect online to run it. For a game like that, offline would be sufficient because what are you missing out on, really? I mean, it could be some minor things like, news on the site or, a Twitch
Yeah.
bonus or something. But, you're getting the core funk. That's also why we put reasonably playable. We want to leave some wiggle room for all these scenarios here.
So I
Right.
should mention that WoW does have private servers, albeit Blizzard does like to take them down as they get really popular. Now, I am curious if legislation could protect those private servers from being taken down. Because, obviously they're not getting server binaries from Blizzard directly. They're reverse engineering things.
Yeah, I was going to mention this. Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, I was looking at everything I said, that was looking at it more conceptually. In real world terms, World of Warcraft is already safe because of those private servers do exist. But yeah, to the best of my knowledge, Actually, I'm not sure how it works with the cop. If they were truly reverse engineered and contained no code that was leaked or stolen, it might depend on the jurisdiction as to how above board that is or not. But I think some of the emulators did have code that came from Blizzard, and it wouldn't necessarily protect those because I would need more details as to how they were created, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that
But
makes sense. Yeah, I think.
So
But oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I mean,
James.
with the private servers and reverse engineering, all they'd have to do also is sniff the packets and see what endpoints are, what they're doing and stuff, and recreate it. It would be it's not easy, but I do think there's a way to save it. But if the game goes offline and Blizzard does like you still have to use the client, but they remove it from the client. Do you think this would maybe save that to where you're like, hey, I have to always at least have access to it, even though there's no servers, but then I could put in my own server. Do you think it would protect something like that?
well, again, we're probably lose on the subscription games. So in that particular case, no. But if it did, actually, there's some nuance again where you said they have to keep the client up. They would have to keep the client up for a reasonable amount of time for customers to grab a copy before they shut it down. So let's say they wanted to end World of Warcraft, and they say, okay, well, here's the client, here's like some server form that you can run. You have 30 days to grab it. After that, we're shutting it all down, and we're never touching this again, and you're on your own. So at that point, it's on to the community. So as long as there's a reasonable chance, they wouldn't have to keep hosting it or make any updates at anything in the future. At that point, they could absolve themselves of all liability.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like what I would like to see is them be able to have like people to have access to it. Obviously, like for me, preservation is a big part of it. But even I think that would be a win to be able to grab the client and then still be able to use it if something like World of Warcraft, which I think one of the more or less likely to happen games. Yeah, sorry, high tech.
So I do have one question. So to take it back to stop killing games. I think one question I have is that one of the things you want is for companies to implement end of life plans, or at the very least mention it. So what's to stop a developer from? So because I think one of the main complaints with this is that you buy a game like The Crew, and there's no there's no indication that it's going to end anytime soon. No expiration date mentioned. But what if games just started having like expiration dates, like, oh, this game will last like 3 years, and it's on the box, like expiration date 2030.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I'm not too worried about things going down that road because I think if there was an expiration date, that would wake up a lot of customers. Like if it said, like on the box, this game will end in 3 years. Plus, companies don't want to have to go down that route. If the game's a smash hit, then that's going to hurt. Then they want to keep it going well beyond that. Whereas, and plus having that expiration date is going to hurt sales from a psychological perspective. Whereas if it's a total flop, well, then they don't want to keep spending money to run these servers. They want to shut it down as soon as possible. So it becomes the path of least resistance to have an end-of-life plan if it's planned for from the beginning. That's why I keep emphasizing it's not retroactive. This can range from easy to near impossible for existing games for trying to implement something like this. It all depends on how the game was set up.
Yes.
So, all right, I have a question. When it comes to like console games, and like, for example, if it's an online game, private servers, I guess it would be up to the developers to like support it that way, or is the movement just focused on PC games at this point?
No, it would include kind of includes all really. For console games, it's similar, but it gets muddier, and some of it would have to get resolved in the EU Commission itself. But some possible options would be okay, because I think the tricky part with consoles is if it's an online game and then the developer wants to shut it down, but then you still need to pay like Sony or Microsoft to have that internet access. So I think in general, it sort of shifts to whoever the last man standing is, kind of requiring you to go through them in order to run the game. So let's say you had a game on Xbox or something, and the developer's like, all right, we're done with this. We're going to shut it down. We're going to make available, let's make it more complicated. Let's say, okay, we're going to, as our end of life plan, we're going to release a server for you, but there's no way this server software can run on the Xbox. It's just too complicated. It's not meant for that. So what we're going to do is you're going to have like 30 days to download it, but we're going to tell you what kind of hardware it can run on, and you're on your own for that. And it might patch the client on the console end to say, like, okay, you can enter in an IP address or something, and that'll connect to it that way. So, yeah, there might be more hoops to jump through for the customer at end of life in order to keep it working. Our main metric is that it's not impossible. But if you also have to pay Microsoft to even have an outward internet connection, it could be you can't run that game without continuing to pay to Microsoft. And then once Microsoft decides to end the Xbox, they have to give you some means to be able to connect your Xbox to the internet, to that IP address, and not interfere with that. So it kind of shifts depending on who's involved in the chain there.
Yeah, I was going to mention, like, with the 360 shutting down the Xbox Live support, would hypothetically in the future, when, PlayStation 4 shuts down its PSN access, what's that going to look like in a world with your initiative here?
Well, that's another thing I left out. It kind of depends on when it happens. See, let's say this goes through and they say, okay, the law goes into effect 2028. One, for sure option would be if they're thinking, okay, there's no way we can comply with this, they might shut down the service by that date, but they were going to anyway. So it could move the timetable up on a few games, but it's not really changing the dynamic. Another option, depending on how this goes in the EU Commission, is they say, okay, this is too radical to just jump in like this, even at a date. What we're going to do, we're going to grandfather in every existing game right now. And that only games that start being sold. So yeah, if you're already selling now, you're exempt for that game moving onward. But any new game that gets sold after that date, then the laws start applying to that. That would probably be what the industry would prefer if they have to comply with this.
Right. I think that makes sense. I guess my question, to reframe it, would be, what if, like, PlayStation 6, 10 years from its release, shuts down PSN?
What they would have to do, you have a PlayStation 6 game that required their service to run it. Once they're ready to shut it down, for the games that you bought, I guess if it was, Sony would have to remove the parts that interfere with you running that game in some form. So the responsibility would be kind of split depending on what was in the way. The game developer, if they were shutting it down, they would have to give you some means to run it. And then Sony, like a client or a patch client or server that may or may not run on the PlayStation, that sort of thing. And Sony would have to basically remove whatever DRM or checks they had that would interfere with you connecting to that kind of end-of-life build. So it could be a dual process, but that's the way I would envision it working.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I go back and play my 360 a lot, and you boot up a game that, like, has Xbox Live leaderboards or something, and it is constantly just prompting you to, like, connect to Xbox Live, and it's like, that doesn't exist anymore. So it would be cool if this legislation were to address those nag screens and stuff too.
The bad news is, as long as you can get in that game and play it reasonably, you might still get nagged.
Yeah.
I have to warn you. That's because we're kind of looking at, like, the core way it was advertised. So,
right.
If it's a driving game, you need to be able to get in, drive around, have races. If it's a shooter, you need to be able to shoot at things and if it's multiplayer, it'd be possible for people to connect to you. It can jettison a whole lot of, that's something else I should mention, especially if technical people are watching. It can jettison a whole lot of a lot of the complexity and cost for many of these online games is related to like kind of microservices that are typically for either running this as a business that's being supported and monitored, or that's for scaling this so that up to 10 million people could play simultaneously through different servers. Whereas we don't really need almost any of it at end of life. Let's see, some examples, if I didn't screw up my notes. Well, I can remember some off the top of my head. Oh yeah, here we go. So like cross-region saves, that could be gone. Anti-cheat, that could be gone. Payments data, analytics, measures to have 99% server uptime, crash reports, voice chats, failover. So they can just rip all of that out for the end of life build because, yeah, there could be cheaters on it. You're playing an unsupported game. That's how it works, you know? And the community, as long as it can kind of run reasonably, especially if you have people connecting that you trust, you know, that's kind of the standard there.
So here's an interesting thought I just had. If a game like Call of Duty that has an online component and a single player component, would they be able to just jettison the multiplayer and just have the single player available?
I think not, because they would have
Okay.
advertised that multiplayer, saying like,
Right.
hey, play online with your friends. That's a pretty
Okay.
core component for some people.
Do you see developers re-implementing LAN connectivity, like, you know, kind of like how you would do in like Quake 3 back in the old days, or maybe even like server browsers like let's look at TF2. TF2 is practically dead. It's not technically dead, but you can still connect to TF2 servers run by people.
Not technically dead counts for us. I don't think we would see, it might be a few companies, I don't think we would see a resurgence. That's another aspect of this, is that up front for their business models, none of this interferes with it while they're supporting the game. So they can structure it however they want, but they really should be having an end of life plan in the background. So, and there are multiple reasons why companies do want to have everybody connect to a server they control. They can kind of control anti-cheat more. I think the number one reason is so they can, you know, sell more microtransactions, because if you can just run a private server with all those microtransactions enabled, that undercuts their economy. But they can have updates to make sure everybody's on the same build. They can do it, you know, makes bug checking easier. It's absolutely an anti-piracy prevention technique. So there are several reasons to have that. So we're trying to make this as light touch as we can, that it's only after they're all done, they've sold everything they're going to sell to it, that's when they need to implement something. So they could run it 20 years and not have to do any of this if the game's still successful.
Fair enough.
What about a game like Destiny, where they have so many like expansions that kind of outdate, like, you know, make the older versions obsolete?
That's another muddy territory that I think would have to wait for it to get to the EU Commission. That one's kind of a mess, because they vaulted like almost all the content from some of the DLCs.
Yeah, they did.
See, that one's weird, because that one's a mess. Because if you bought those DLCs and you can show that it's almost all gone, that might be a valid complaint that they can't just vault it the way they do, unless they're giving you a date when it's going to come back, maybe. Or I don't know. But I guess on an easier version of that would be, let's say, well, we mentioned World of Warcraft. 1.0 of World of Warcraft is very different than what it is now, and they kind of change things as they go through it. Or several games are like that. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just they do, like, World of Warcraft does have retroactive or like they've gone back into time, right? And they've re-released World of Warcraft Classic, and so it's definitely doable. Destiny 2, I definitely think could just they have patches and stuff like that they could probably reverse. So it'd be interesting. The company probably doesn't want to deal with it, and so they're going to say it's not possible. But I'm really curious to see where
Well,
that
you remember
goes.
that lawsuit against that author that claimed
Yeah.
that Bungie plagiarized their story? Apparently, Bungie doesn't have a playable build of their old shit, and
I don't believe
it's
it.
kind of
I
a.
don't.
I
I'm
mean, I don't believe
sorry.
it either.
I don't
I
trust
don't.
these companies to say I guarantee their legal team said stuff like that just to make it so they didn't have to deal with anything. I bet you
Yeah,
it would be. But now in the '90s when we didn't have, because there's a lot of different types of repository and like what is it like Git. But there's a couple of different ones for games. Unless
like
they
version
purge their
control.
logs, which is crazy, they you could go back. Sorry,
Yeah.
that's just really one where I'm just really, as a developer myself, I don't believe them in any aspect.
Yeah, I don't
Well,
believe it.
Yeah.
I think the reason they didn't do that is because once the public sees that they can have this content working, that's going to be an uproar for them to bring it back. And
Which
it's
is
easier just to point. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it could be a monetization aspect even if they really wanted to, like World of Warcraft Classic did. But yeah, sorry.
I feel like the simplest answer for something like Destiny is for every like thing that a customer gets to buy, they just have to have like an end of life for that product, right? Which I don't know exactly how the monetization worked with DLC or whatever the story content for Destiny was, but like it doesn't make sense to me that they could just sell you something and then change it over time and then take it away from you.
Yeah, that's one where we would kind of see how it went, I think, because it's a spectrum. Because on one hand, it could be an update just leads to like some balance tweaks, and people might be screaming for the previous one, they liked it better, but it's like, well, you're still kind of getting the game. But there's other instances where they just remove levels and maps and story, so it's like, well, okay, you really are being deprived at that point. So we're not going to be real hard about pushing like which version has to be available, but again, it kind of comes to that reasonably playable aspect again. If you do have a DLC effectively removed, then you have a much stronger case reporting that to a consumer protection agency, and they can say, yeah, you removed this from them, so we're going to fine you.
Yes.
So I do have like an important question I've been wanting to ask about this, and this leads into it. Do you think it is more important to focus on this overarching goal than it is to like go after these individual cases that we've been kind of bringing up? Do you think even bringing that stuff up in these for this case would hurt it? Like if we keep on like hounding, oh, World of Warcraft needs to work at the end of life, do you think focusing on that type of stuff will hurt the movement more than just like a broad aspect? Because I do think focusing on the broadness is worthwhile, but I do think once, let's say, laws are passed and stuff like that, or we have like a really good end of life plan for a broad ranging of games, then just focus on later to go after some of these specific cases like Destiny.
Yeah, I don't. Okay, for the initiative, it's not going to go after any specific company. It's going to be a broad practice, and what might happen is they would bring up examples of a way a game might go, like World of Warcraft, and see, okay, well, how would this fit under it, or how would a game like this fit under it? For the specific example, that's something we have underway, and it's been going on for over a year now with The Crew. The reason I never really did too much on this, aside from try to raise awareness, was because there wasn't really a good avenue to take action on this prior to last year. See, The Crew was almost not the perfect, but almost perfect test case for this for a few reasons. One is that it was semi-big. There were up to 12 million owners, according to Ubisoft. So that meant there were a lot of people still standing around with receipts that they could send to a consumer protection agency as proof that they bought it. So we were able to get thousands of complaints in that way, so it can get their attention. The second is that ties in what we're talking about here, is that it's what I call a clean kill. there was no ambiguity about what happened here. It's not like the DLC went down, but then some of the game still works, or the multiplayer went down, but the single player works. No, every single person who had it just had it completely removed from their libraries in any capacity. It was just dead. And there was no compensation given because Overwatch was a much bigger game that got shut down. But then they released Overwatch 2 for free, and then they gave benefits like with skins or whatever, to people who did own Overwatch 1. So an agency might look at that and thought, well, they're compensating the owners, so we're just not going to worry about that. It would have killed me to like lose on a technicality like that. I want it just black and white. Is this legal or not? You know, not have these little, you know, in between issues there. And the final reason.
Okay. No, yeah, sorry. Continue.
Okay, just quick. The final reason was that this was Ubisoft is in France, which means it is subject to all kinds of consumer protection laws, and both for the EU and France. So stuff that wouldn't fly necessarily in the US or get muddied, it was just clear as day there. So
yeah, and so I would love to see eventually, and that's why I ask, is like I want to see this past where like games like The Crew, like that type of thing does not happen again. But I would like to see more, honestly, I'd like to see more legislation on stuff like Destiny 2, where they have to have snapshots of each time they do a release of DLC, and which they could do. And it doesn't have to be retroactive. It could be like, hey, any games in the future, just make sure you save a copy of the game, like, and that there's some type of client that can activate it. It really, like, with planning, it does not take a whole lot to do this type of thing. Do you think that would be a movement that would be reasonable later on after something like this, you know, is successful?
Yeah, I think so. I had two thoughts of this. One is that right now, it's unclear if we have any rights whatsoever. So, you know, we can ask for this stuff and they can say, yeah, whatever, we'll turn off the game, keeping your money. So we need like a beachhead of rights first to just say, no, that's beyond the pale. This is protected. Then after that point, then you start getting into more nuanced issues like Destiny, where you can point to obvious stuff they've removed. Even that gets a little thorny because, you know, there's some games that have just hundreds of individual updates. Like, okay, this is 1.03A, this is 1.0311A. And then, so do they need to keep, and let's say the game's huge, you know, well, Destiny is pretty big. It's like, what, 100 gigs now or something? Or 80 gigs?
Yeah, but I'm usually saying snapshots as in like, if there's a major change, like a DLC, or I'm not talking about like individual updates. Let's say, oh, we fixed a couple of things here and there. I know some people are going to argue, some gamers are going to want like some old hack they were able to do a couple of versions back in some of these games, but fundamental changes to the game and snapshots, they guarantee the companies already have that type of stuff. But making sure that it is unlockable would be, I think, a huge win. But it definitely is like something we don't need to talk about because it is down the road kind of stuff. Like there's still a lot of stuff to get over.
Yeah,
like that, a lot of hurdles to get to over before we get to that.
I think that's a lot easier when you do have clear markers like an expansion for World of Warcraft or a DLC for Destiny. The problem is you're going to have games that are just kind of this ongoing fluid update that, yeah, things do change over time, but where exactly was the big change and where does this count and that sort of thing. So, I mean, I guess the way you could legislate that would be by time intervals, maybe like every year they have to have like some build of it, or, but
it would be nice, but it's definitely one of those things. It's a nicety, and there's a lot of other big targets before that.
The perfect solution, which is rare, unfortunately, would be, I think it's like what Deep Rock Galactic did, where they have this option where you can just hit a mode and go to their previous expansions, like as if you were going back in time 4 years or something. But I can understand if developers don't necessarily want to do that, but I'm all for what you're describing.
With better practices, they can do it.
Yeah, we need a foundation first to say that.
Yeah.
Before you worry about different versions, we need to establish that they can't just take away the entire game at any time for no reason, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it would make sense if there was like, if developers just wanted to be ethical, which I find hilarious to say, they could just create snapshots of the game at certain intervals, like you were saying, James, and then use like Steam's beta thing that's built into it now. And there's an API that lets the game opt into different versions of betas. So you can kind of just roll back to different snapshots. And if your legislation goes through, Ross, I think that it might be smart for platform holders like PlayStation and Xbox and even Nintendo to offer a similar feature, right?
Yeah, we're kind of straying into stuff that sounds like a great idea, but somebody else is going to have to pick up after we get a victory on that. Like, just because it's been hard enough pushing this.
Yeah, I love your movement, and I'm thinking it like practically down the road how it can actually be implemented.
Yeah.
So I understand.
Yeah, so last time we checked the last week when we did the podcast, we checked the website, and I think it was at like 51%. James, am I correct?
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously now it's at 100 and like over 1 million and 1 million and close to 1.2 million actually. And we've noticed that you've gotten some very powerful allies for your movement. I wonder how much of it came from their fan bases going over there, like, because I know none of these guys are.
It's hard to say, but a significant amount. I mean, we were kind of in a lull for a long time, and one of the biggest things where it started ticking up again was when Moist Critical started covering it, and then I think at least about 5% of his audience translated to about that many views. I mean, about that many signatures.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
there's PewDiePie also, who's he's a European citizen, isn't he? So.
Well, I think he's Japanese. I think he lives in Japan now, but he is from. He lives in Japan,
but
Europe.
But he's not denaturalized from Europe, right?
Well,
I think he's still
less about.
Sorry, not to get into.
It's less about the nationality of who's covering it and about their audience.
That's I'm kind of thinking that someone like PewDiePie would have probably pretty big European audience just because he's from Europe. But yeah, that's why I was kind of going with that, and so that'd be a big deal. No, this is. I'm seeing it everywhere now on my my YouTube newsfeed now. Everyone, is promoting this.
And I can only think of really one. Well, actually, no. Now we have two major opponents. First and foremost was Pirate Software. I don't know if you.
I can answer questions if you want. I'm not trying to twist the knife on him.
Yeah. Don't worry, man. We're not gonna. I have no ill will against him, personally speaking. I just don't agree with his take on Stop Killing Games. But there was another major opponent that rose up too. VideoGamesEurope.eu.
Yes.
So
I intend to make a video on that, but I can discuss it.
So I am curious though, like if you could answer, like maybe because I haven't looked into those sources too much, but if there's anything you want to like talk about to maybe not discredit, but like to answer maybe some of their issues with the movement. Maybe there's something you can.
Yeah, sure. Well, I can give a preview of what I'm going to say. Let's see. I'm trying to pull up their exact. Shoot. Well, I mean, I have my script, but okay, I'll try to. I don't have the exact link up in front of me, but it'll make it easier. But
no, you're good. I was just curious. Yeah.
Okay. So no, they had several things, like because some of the stuff we agree. Yeah, their first sentence is they're saying that publishers must be able to discontinue online services. Yeah, we agree. You can shut them down whenever you want. So we're good there. Let's see. They are, and they're talking about giving fair notice for when they shut them down. Well, one, that might not be true, according to a German lawyer, WBS Legal, for the Crew. But second, that's irrelevant. We don't care. We're not arguing about how much notice you need to give people. We're arguing that you can't deprive them of their purchase. Oh yeah, that's another thing that some people get hung up on, is they might think we're asking for all these new intellectual property rights. We're actually not. What we're asking for is to prohibit taking away what's already been sold to the customer, because they've been sold, limited access to a working game. But they have provisions that, well, we can terminate this at any time for any reason. We're going after that provision saying that they can't do that. So you have to sell the customer some rights just to even run the game. That's one thing I think people forget, you know. And when I say some rights, you know, you're not getting the rights to the franchise. You're not getting the rights to resell copies of it, or maybe even monetize a server, you know, if they prohibited that. We're agnostic on that. So it still leaves a whole lot of power. They just can't, you know, take away your purchase. But let's
Yeah.
Yeah,
see,
it's not like this is Netflix for games, right? Like, I'm not
Yeah.
purchasing access to a streaming service that has thousands of games, even like Game
like
Pass.
Game Pass or something.
If I'm spending $60, $70, I'm expecting a copy. Well, but the Crew is. I'm going after Crew. That was
the thing, it's, you don't have to look at it like that. They're selling you access to the game, and they're giving you no expiration date. And the terms that they give, they can terminate at any time for any reason. We got a quote from the EU Commission saying that actually could run afoul of, it's called Directive 9313 EEC, which protects consumers against unfair contracts. So if that term is unfair, saying like, okay, you can't just take it away for no reason, that's kind of ridiculous. Well, then how long is your game expected to last? Well, they didn't give an expiration date. They might have put themselves on the hook for indefinitely. Now, that's not realistic, so the only kind of way out of that is to have some sort of end-of-life build so they don't have to keep supporting it.
Funny story you mentioned the Crew, because there is a lawsuit that's still going on in California, but 2 players allege that there is an expiration date that shipped with the code that they got for the Crew, and it says 2099. So
yeah, in fact, I may have had a hand in making them aware of that, actually.
Really?
Yeah, we had nothing to do with the lawsuit. We didn't start it. But I made a video reacting to the lawsuit. As I think even if they win, it's going to be a Pyrrhic victory. It won't stop future games from being saved. But I said, well, since you're already doing it, you know, well, here, you might as well mention on the box, it says expires at, you know, January 31st or 2099, because that might help them win. But the reason that won't save games is the lesson the industry will get from that is don't put that on the box. And that's a pretty solvable problem but will lead to games still getting destroyed.
I think you might be surprised in, like, let's say the States, like the United States, like we could honestly see some pushback on some of these clauses in their terms of services and even to some copyrights, because we've had pushback, let's say, in the labor force where you couldn't go work for. I shouldn't get it too deep into that, but I'm curious to reframe all this. Do you think a movement like this in America could take place, or is we just really focused on the EU because it's just going to be easier?
I think it's technically not impossible. Is the way I look at it for the United States. Every lawyer I've talked to on this, the U.S. lawyer, says that nothing less than an act of Congress is going to fix this. So yeah, if you know somebody with deep pockets who can lobby Congress, this is possible. But if you don't, I think you might as well buy a lottery ticket if you're feeling that lucky. Now,
it's not going to happen in the next 4 years. Let's just say that, not to get too political. But yeah, sorry.
The reason I'm so hell-bent on the EU, well, also Australia, is that let's say this goes through and they have to start releasing end-of-life plans for games they sell in the European Union. Well, once that's happened, then they'll have already done the work for the end-of-life build, so they may as well roll them out globally because it would barely be any more effort, and it would be much better PR than not doing that. And we've seen this before, or something similar, in Australia when they sued Valve over not allowing refunds on Steam. Valve lost, so rather than only allow Australians to refund the games, they just rolled it out globally because they decided, okay, we lost this. It's not worth going through this in every country one by one. Let's just get it over with, you know? So I think it would become the path of least resistance to just, so I think Americans would get almost all the benefits downstream from this.
We usually benefit from the EU greatly. Like USB-C alone, I'm grateful for with iPhone.
Yeah.
But I because of something, especially California, really pushing a lot of stuff, it tends to trickle up, or at least there's protections in certain states. So I'm not a lawyer with all this stuff, but I am curious to see maybe this could even become a state-based issue to where some states have more protections, consumer protections.
I'm not a lawyer, but I can address that part.
Okay.
I've talked to lawyers about this. In fact, we were pursuing something like this in Florida originally with one of them where we thought we might be able to get a case going. But what he found in his legal research is that because United States law defers so much to the EULA, the End User License Agreement, they often specify which state that any conflicts with them are going to be tried in, which is typically California, sometimes Washington. So if you buy the game in, Alabama or Florida or wherever, doesn't matter. If you want to go to court over this, you're going to California, and then whatever their law says goes. Now, if you're really optimistic, does California have a direct ballot initiative?
That's a good question.
I don't
None
know.
Of us
I think
live,
it might.
None of us
So
live in California.
if you can get a bunch of typical voters who probably don't care about video games to care about this and get it on a ballot, that might be a back way to it. But man, the odds are I see that as just 50 times harder than what I'm doing.
Citrus. Yeah. I think reframing it as owning your product that you like, at least owning partially the product that you buy. And I know that there's been a lot of people have talked about it here in the States, a lot about, well, if I'm going to buy something, software, whatever it is, like, how do I not, I just have it licensed? And they're starting to do that with hardware. So I'm curious if there is a way to get this through to at least offer better protections for consumers. But, I think EU, we don't need to get too deep into this because I think the EU is a great start.
Yeah, no, believe me, if I could have done things in the United States, that'd be a lot easier because most of my audience is American. Yeah. So, but I just was not, we just had to go to where the openings were.
No, yeah. I think getting awareness alone is helpful. Like it's a trickle down. Like eventually this could spread out to maybe being a bigger issue in the States. But especially, let's say if the EU initiative doesn't, it works for the EU and some other countries, but doesn't work for the United States. It still sets a precedence and it still sets like expectations for people.
I think the United States will be getting most of the benefits still. I mean, not every last game, but 80-90% of what's getting destroyed now are those types of games.
I looked into your major opponents here, the Video Games Europe, and they're not obviously, of course, they're not a legislative body. They are, in fact, a conglomerate of video game publishers, kind of like what we have in the US, the ESA.
Yeah.
So let me read out all of your.
And CD Projekt is not on that list, and I wish they were. They're the ones that own GOG, and have DRM free stuff.
Yes. So let's see who we have here. We have Activision Blizzard. These guys, AEPDV from Portugal. We have AVI. Let's get to the good ones. We have Bandai Namco, EA, Embracer, Epic Games. It's.
I think Tencent's on there, isn't it?
You see that tripled the hamburger button up there on the top right?
I don't. I see a different screen, actually.
Oh, wait. Never mind then. Let's see. We have Microsoft, Netflix, Nintendo.
Rogues Gallery.
Sega. Roblox. Oh, we haven't even talked about Roblox, because that would be another... That'd be another another can of worms open. Let's see. Sony, Square... Supercell, the guys that make Clash of Clans, of course. Ubisoft, Take-Two, WB, ZeniMax. Funny story. What I do find interesting is that I think even before we hit 1 million subs, 1 million a million signatures for your Stop Killing Games movement, I think we already started to see some effects, because we're starting to see more of these failed live service games implementing their own offline, their own end of life plans, like offline services, like multiverses. Have you heard of multiverses?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Knockout City was another one.
yeah, so I mean, those are that's totally playable offline. Yeah, now granted, you can't play online against people, which is kind of unfortunate because that's kind of what it was billed as.
It's still a hell of a lot better than completely dead. Yeah.
Yes, and also Redfall 2 is playable offline as well.
That one's tricky though, because Redfall, I believe, still has de novo DRM.
Right.
So I don't know what's going on with Redfall. It could be in a few years it shuts down and nobody can play it, because if nobody removes the DRM before they end support. So I don't know about Redfall. That one's tricky.
So I could see them removing de novo at some point because de novo is also in and of itself a subscription. Like developers have to pay like thousands of dollars to keep de novo up. And I mean, if a
Yeah, I
game
was
like
gonna
Redfall
say.
isn't selling super, if a game like Redfall isn't selling super well, then I think if they're cutting a bunch of people and stuff, which we'll talk about later. They're cutting corners everywhere. Might as well cut out de novo out of it too, right? I mean, what's the point at this
Yeah, I
point?
hope. I mean,
It's,
I
it's
mean,
it's shocking that they still have they're still paying for that subscription for a game that probably doesn't make them any money. Even though I like the game, I even haven't bought it yet, but I do like the idea that there's offline support that I could potentially buy it one day just for the heck of it. But
yeah, like
yeah,
I'm honestly, I didn't even know it still. I didn't know it had Denuvo to begin with, much less still has Denuvo. That's crazy to me.
well,
that
I
is
think it
crazy.
does. I know it did at some point.
The Steam, I just checked the Steam page. It still says it has Denuvo, and but no one's asking for people to remove Denuvo from Redfall because no one's playing Redfall.
That's
So
cool.
what about Anthem? Like that's on the list, right? That's like the next story.
Yes,
Like, what's going on with
Yes. How does this so with Anthem High Tech, how does this kind of loop into Stop Killing Games?
Well, all we know for certain is that they wanna kill Anthem. They want to kill Anthem on January the 12th, 2026, which will effectively most likely mean they'll kill it before Stop Killing Games actually takes effect.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yes, and also I also found this super funny. The last the last question of the FAQ: has anyone else at BioWare been affected by these changes? No. The sunsetting of Anthem has not led to any layoffs. So I thought it was super funny that they had to mention that. But let's go over to the details. Let's see. Why can't I play Anthem in offline mode? It was designed to be an online only title, so once servers go offline, the game will no longer be playable. Can I install Anthem if I previously had purchased the game? Yes, if you purchase Anthem, it can still be downloadable from a digital library and played until January 12th. Why can I no longer purchase Anthem or in-game currency? Yeah, over the next 180 plus days, Anthem will still be playable offline and online, and you can use the last of your in-game premium currency as we prepare to sunset the game's live servers on January 13th, 2026. Will I still be using my in-game currency? Yes. How long will it be on EA Play? Anthem will be removed from EA Play playlist on August 15th, 2025. Anthem hasn't seen an update since 2020, so for all intents and purposes, it is a game that is no longer in active development.
Yeah. Anthem is it's not the best candidate because it was reviewed so poorly, but it is an example of why we're pushing this, because there's many, many other games like that are kind of at risk. And I'm annoyed too, because I heard it wasn't good, but I was curious because I saw, all these canyons and waterfalls and world to run around in. So I figured, well, if I keep my expectations low going in, that could be interesting, but it's getting eradicated, so I won't find out.
Yeah, and plus you can't. Oh, sorry. Plus you can't buy the game anymore now. They took it off of. I don't think it was ever on Steam, but it used to be on the Origin, what they used to call it. Not anymore, though, of course. I played the beta for Anthem. I thought it was pretty fun, though. A lot of the, but that's just like the early game, though. A lot of the issues with Anthem really crops up in the end game, from what I understand. But but what matters is that the game will not be playable. I thought it was a pretty cool, like, because of flight mechanics, because all of the suits can fly, kind of like Iron Man, and I thought that was pretty sick, to be honest. That was easily the best part of the game.
I mean, that's what they sold us, was that you can be Iron Man essentially. I never played it. I was always curious, but this is one of those games where I'd like to see the preservation kind of take place, where I just don't want to see, because I consider games art, and killing games to where we can never get them back is akin to like ripping up a piece of art that is, you know, whether it be dozens of years or 100 years old. Like it's I think a little atrocious, but that's, I think, a little beyond the
getting
movement
paid
at this
for
point.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
plus
You're getting paid to rip it up. Yeah.
dude,
Yeah.
that like, this reminds me of that story. You know, the I think it was at the Ecce Homo or something. It was like a picture of Jesus that was starting to get like starting to get deteriorated, but then someone painted it terribly. And
Yeah, some old lady, I think.
yeah, I feel
The
I mean,
sort
I
of
feel
thing look like my mother might do. Yeah.
I mean, I feel bad that she had to take a lot of the blame for it, because I mean, she didn't really do a great job, but I feel bad because it's an old lady. But
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. How would you rope this back into games? Because,
Well, I mean,
have
compare
some
that
old
to like what communities do with like open
Yeah.
source reimplementations. Like it's a totally different thing, you know?
yeah.
Well, I mean, part of the issue. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think even just allowing some protections to modders and to the open source community to make sure that these games don't die off would be like substantially better. Nintendo can't just go and frickin' sue a whole company or a whole emulator, let's say, and just destroy a whole group of preservations, like for Switch, preserving so we can play games, let's say, down the road, or even the games I bought now.
Or Take-Two taking down the open source reimplementation of Grand Theft Auto 3, if you guys remember that.
Yeah. Where they got their money. It's all about protecting IP, and I get it. IP laws, I make it so you have to protect your IP, or you can lose some of the rights to it.
I
Not
think it's
necessarily.
trademark that you're thinking of.
I'm thinking of trademarks and also patents. Patents have to be defended. I know that.
I think that's a cop out though, because you can release it on your terms, even if you have
Right.
like I'm pretty sure Rockstar has released like old Grand Theft Auto games for free as like a promotion with the new one coming or something. I remember them. You think they lost the Grand Theft Auto trademark in any way by doing that? You know,
No, but that's under their terms. I'm just talking about defending.
I see. Yeah.
I'm just talking about defending.
James,
I don't like it.
The fact is though, like Sega allows Sonic fan games, and they don't have they're not fretting, they're not clutching their pearls over if they're going to lose their IP to Sonic. Like it's just I think that it's just honestly, I think it's the same reason that the games industry is so opposed to Stop Killing Games, right? It's because they want to have control and they don't want to answer to anybody, and they want to be able to like take away the games that you already own so that you are more likely to buy their next thing. And and I think that's a flawed thought process, but I think that is where they're coming from.
I think I think that's the case for some companies. It depends on the company culture. I think the leading reason is they don't have to do anything, so they don't. And the people who are making the games typically aren't the same people making the decisions on the games. Those are going to be kind of the shareholders or something. So from their perspective, it's just product. It doesn't, okay, so we can, people want to keep playing this for 0.001% cost. Well, we don't have to, so let's just not do it. Okay, move on to the next thing. Like EA, I think, is an example of that. Everything about EA's behavior suggests they just don't care. They don't care when the game goes down. They kind of don't care when it comes, on the few times it comes back up. They just don't care. So, whereas others are trying to usher you into the new game, like I guess Overwatch would be an example.
Yeah. So to speak on the EA thing real quick, there and to your point about it depends on the company culture, like there are leaders within EA who actually care about the community, and then there are ones who don't, right? Like the guy, I can't remember his name, Jim Vasella. He's like the guy behind Command and Conquer, and he like really cares about the community, and he's open sourced the original Command and Conquer games, and he's done a bunch of work to help OpenRA and these open source Command and Conquer projects. And so to your point, I shouldn't just speak broadly about like all game publishers or all executives, but there definitely are some good ones out there for sure.
Yeah,
But that's the
and
same
there's some leaders
company
in those. Yeah,
killing Anthem.
Yes,
So-
exactly. Yeah.
and Dead Space 2. So now that we brought up EA, Dead Space is one of my favorite series, but Dead Space 2, I bought it on Steam, and then they moved everything over to their EA store, and they kind of like F you guys over on Steam. I cannot play Dead Space 2 on Steam that I purchased without a CD crack, because their services for checking whether the CD key is registered and like a whole other, like, it was back during a whole time where you could only register so many CD keys on so many computers, doesn't work now. So there's no way to play it unless you crack the game. So that's EA too. When it's a really simple, I shouldn't say really simple. As long as they have the source code, it's ripping that service out, that check. All they have to do is release one update for that check, and it would work.
Well, don't you remember the whole studio that made Dead Space to begin with is gone?
Yeah, I know, but the Dead Space remake studio did an amazing job, but they still have the source code. They can give it to me as a contract. I'll do it for free. Like, they don't. I'll release the patch because I guarantee it's like a 1 or 2 line piece, and I'll fix it for them. But it's really annoying
hire
that
this man.
Don't have to hire
He'll
me.
fix he'll fix all of your problems for free.
Yeah, just put your contact
Honestly,
information once you put this public, so they can reach you.
It's cheaper. It's cheaper than AI. James is cheaper than AI. Hire him for free.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm not going to be doing a bunch of work for them for free, but like, I could solve a lot of their problems if they wanted me to. But that's it's ultimately a leadership issue, and so I don't think they're going to like that.
Yeah, it is what it is. It sucks that Anthem is gonna die, and it seems like EA. This news article came out the same day that your thing hit 1 million signatures. So it makes me think that maybe they just want to kill it ahead of time before SKG can actually.
Oh, they have plenty of time. Yeah, if they're closing it at 2026, they'll be in the safe zone for sure.
So
I'm
I
shocked
wonder
they
how
haven't
many...
killed it yet.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I am too, but I wonder how many more failed live service games we'll see. Live services will see. Try to wrap things up before Stop Killing Games can save them.
I'm getting annoyed looking at these questions. What they can't play in offline mode because it was designed as an online only title. Fine, so rip out all the microservices and have the end of life built. Yeah, that's another thing I heard from a developer that's saying not having a local test environment is basically bad practice, period. To be able to test it, because if you're relying on all these services while you're developing the game, well, what if one of them goes down? Well, then now you're stuck in the water trying to fix the game, and you can't.
Well, apparently Bungie doesn't have an internal test environment for their old versions of their games. So much so that they can't. So back to the Bungie lawsuit. Apparently,
they can mock the services. I'm just going to say this. Sorry, just to help people. Like, you can mock services locally. We do it on every other in every other development industry where we develop software. You can mock services. So sorry.
Yeah.
So many aren't needed for end of life.
Yeah. So
you could mock them even. You could even ship it with the mock because for tests and for doing certain testing, you can mock services. You could ship it even with those mock services.
Like anything that'd be like a privacy issue or monetization, stuff that would have personal right. You don't want that stuff in the final.
No, you don't want to, but they have. I would be shocked if they didn't have a way for testing locally in a mock service to where you could just do unlimited, let's say, credits or something like that. There's still aspects to they could ship it at least like that, but yeah. Sorry, what?
Yeah, so
Where were you going, high tech?
Yeah. Anyway, so apparently they have to use They have these fan videos which contain like compilations of cutscenes that were recorded by YouTubers, which is bullshit. But speaking of YouTube, I think we should talk about Google, or rather the de-googling of
de-googling movement, which there's Reddit. There's a whole Reddit communities around and everything. I'm kind of like halfway in there. I've gotten rid of a lot of my Google services except for my one Gmail account, which I just can't get rid of because there's so much tied to that one. But I moved everything over. Like I'm done with it. But you know who else is done with this? And I was a little shocked, even though he's been diving into Linux more and more. That is PewDiePie.
PewDiePie. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
this is interesting to me. I haven't watched the video yet, but I think I might react to it for my Monday video.
So PewDiePie, he's trying to cut out Google altogether now. I mean, obviously you can't cut out Google for things like YouTube, of course, but everything else. I mean, he switched to Arch Linux. And he's even riced out his Linux distro in a way that even Gardner Bryant, our resident Linux YouTuber here, hasn't. Fraud!
I am a fraud. I have never riced even a little bit. I like the standard GNOME desktop environment, and I don't care about customizing it.
Fraud!
So, yeah, that's just me. Ross, do you have any experience with Linux at all?
Yeah, I monkeyed with it for a while. I was doing like game compatibility testing on stuff that was kind of off the beaten path, that there are no entries on, like, what was it, ProtonDB or WineHQ. I'm essentially envious of people who can completely migrate to Linux. I have too many weird things I do that I would have to jettison too much.
I'll tell you, it is a lifestyle that you have to fully opt into if you're gonna do it. Yeah. I've gone through. I buy a lot of hardware, and half of it, or maybe 3/4 of it, isn't compatible with Linux. So then I have to return it. It's super fun.
Yeah, the nightmare scenario on my end would probably be running games that were never designed for VR with wrappers or hooks or something to make them stereoscopic, and running those in VR headsets that might not be supported. I don't think that would be a fun time on Linux.
No, I mean, so the thing is, even Valve's like Index headset, which I have one out there, I have a Windows PC for that, because even to this day, like the last time I tried, which I guess was like a year ago, but the last time I tried Valve's own VR headset on Linux, it was kind of a nauseating experience. And Valve's like the biggest like for-profit company champion of Linux gaming out there. So
my line in the sand is, if later Windows just two things, either requires you to be online at all times, or there is simply no way to stop updates on your own terms, then at that point I'll probably be Luddite for a little while using old Windows, but I would eventually go to Linux and set up a KVM for I would use Linux for whatever's easy to use Linux on, and then for everything else I would have a KVM maybe for old Windows, and then another one for modern Windows that I'm just treating like it's a thin client or something that I'm assuming it's all temporarily. It'll get screwed up with whatever, just for stuff that has to be online through Windows.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
To be honest, the thing that's stopping me from switching full-time to Linux is online multiplayer, but also just laziness, because I have a lot of stuff that's set up. I have my video editing set up right here, and it would take me a lot of time to like migrate everything, migrate all the fonts. Heck, honestly, I don't know. I mean, it would just take a long time for me to get everything the way I wanted to on Linux. And not knocking Linux, it's a great system. I've explored it quite a bit, and even before, like I really dove into it deep when the Steam Deck was announced, because I was like, there's no way Linux is a good experience for video games. But then it was. So
Yeah.
I was kind of a doubter at first.
With enough time and with enough, developers, you can make Linux be the best experience, which I think we're already getting there somewhat with the Steam Deck. But I've given up on Windows, and I have not switched over to Linux. I've switched over to Unix based system, which is Mac OS.
Yeah.
So I'm sure
they're cousins.
I thought you were gonna say FreeBSD.
no, I Mac OS because I'm done with Windows. Now that being said, my plan is to have a handheld once the Legion Go 2 comes out, to get that and to have that be like my gaming device with an eGPU. And so I probably won't be going away from Windows anytime soon, but I'm going to be limiting it as much as I can how I use it. Like, it's going to be used for games that I kind of just don't want to deal with on Linux. And then I'm going to dual boot it, of course. I'm going to dual boot it with probably SteamOS or with Bazite, and then slowly, once I feel like it's really gotten there, I'll just switch away from Windows completely. Like,
Yeah.
But
VR is a hard one. VR is a really hard one, and eGPUs. I just don't know if Steam Deck supports eGPUs quite yet. So
I'm sure if Valve wills it, they will make it happen. But PewDiePie, not only did he cut out Windows, he also cut out. He also started doing self-hosting stuff. Like, he self-hosts on Nextcloud as well, which I know Gardner does.
Yeah.
I've played with her on a little bit. So, do you know what Nextcloud is, Ross?
No, sorry, spaced on it. The last word?
Nextcloud.
Nextcloud, no.
So it's a self-hosted. So think of like Google Drive, and also Google like
cloud storage,
like Docs.
Yeah, like Google Docs and all that stuff. Like
it's self-hosted. Like, you run it on a machine on your local network, and you can expose it to the wider internet, and you can use it just like you would use Google Drive or anything like that.
Office 365 as well. Yes.
Yeah.
And apparently he also runs a self-hosted password manager on his Steam Deck. So he's not even he's using his Steam Deck for like server related tasks, which is kind of insane to me.
That's actually really cool. I thought about buying like a broken Steam Deck and just running the hardware in a 3D printed rack mountable case. Like just the motherboard itself,
You should do that, Gardner.
What do you mean? Like, I have one Steam Deck where the daughter boards don't work, so the control, but you can still hook up a keyboard and mouse and it works fine. What would you use it for? Out of curiosity,
you could use it as a web host. You could use it to do crunch. I don't know if the LCD model has been unlocked yet, but there were a bunch of AI cores that were locked in the CPU. And you could use, if those have been unlocked at some point, we could use that for like some AI crunching stuff.
Some AI crunching. I do know that the Steam Deck is horrible at multi-threaded tasks compared to, it's very optimized for games, let's say, because I have developed on a Steam Deck, because I have software that I need to bring back, but I have developed software for the Steam Deck on the Steam Deck, and it was a nightmare.
So James, the simplest solution could also be to just turn it into like a home console of sorts. Put that baby in put it in a little 3D printing enclosure that, screw it up, put a fan on it just in case.
Yep.
Bob's
I think there's someone who's already done that. I've thought about doing that, but at the end of the day, I really just like the eGPU. It does bother me. Like, there's not eGPU support for the Steam Deck. I really think that's the final piece of the puzzle, to just have the main gaming device would be a handheld, and then you can hook it up into an eGPU in any house, or any part of the house you want. But
yeah.
To give you a quick Linux story I had when I was doing tests on it, one of the things I wanted to simulate was like a lot of old games, especially on NVIDIA cards, but both to some extent, with AMD, you can force anti-aliasing on older games. And there was some of that on Wine, not on Proton, but on Proton, you could still have the option of downsampling, you know, so rendering it higher. Well, on Windows, I think at both AMD and NVIDIA, that's just a matter of just, you know, putting in some numbers or checking a box and you're done. On Linux, it was led down a road where we have to use GameScope to do it and specify the numbers. But then we tried it and it wouldn't work. And I was getting help from people much more experienced than me on this. And there was like a whole thread in my forums on it where it just kept escalating where it wouldn't work. And then for a long time, I found out like one of the repositories for it, they were actually sending me a bad link of an older one. That was the reason it wasn't working. But then we found it, and then it still wasn't working properly, or yeah, like I was trying to do just a 2x scaling. And what we found was that for some reason, like just simple integer numbers didn't work. But if you did 2.01, then that did work. And then somebody went and modified that on it for it to finally work, and then got rid of some extra blur filter, and then it finally worked. I'm just like, good God, you know. That's the thing. Like some things on Linux, for me, it's like a third that they work just fine, and then there's like other things are like that where it's just this weeks-long rabbit hole, sometimes with help. See, what scares me about Linux is that I don't always know if there's going to be light at the end of that tunnel. See, if I knew it was just a matter of jumping through 50 hoops, I can do that. But it's when I don't know how deep the well goes, you know, that's what could scare me on it. No, that was it. It was just an example.
No, I get it. Like that, there's a bunch that can just go wrong in the wonkiest ways. But like, I also find that fun. So, the uncertainty.
I think that's the attitude you have to have.
Yeah. As long as you're not like doing mission critical stuff that has to be done at a certain time, and you just enjoy it, then it's quite fun. But there are some Linux distros out there that like, just for some reason they just seem to like have better support for everything. Linux Mint is one of them.
Okay, I could probably find the version number, but at some point when I was running into some problems, it was just feeling so crazy to me that I thought, like, okay, should I just try another distro? And some people recommended Nobara just for like a testing purpose. And at the time, they probably fixed it by now. I downloaded it, this is on a second system, so I just nuked everything, you know, wiped the drive so I could install fresh, that sort of thing. And it just screwed up its own bootloader. And it would just, I could never actually, it would install and then it would just screw up every time. And this is with me giving full permission to just wipe the SSD or wipe the hard drive. It can do whatever it wants. And so.
Yeah, I get that. I've seen some very strange things. I think I've told this story on the podcast before, but Ross, I installed a Ubuntu a long time ago on my dad's laptop, and he was not super savvy with computers, but he knew enough to be dangerous. So he wanted to start chatting with like people, like women from other countries, and he ended up installing a Chinese like malware chat app, a Windows Chinese malware app, and he installed malware on Linux through Wine. And I was very impressed that not only was he capable of doing that, but he also like the malware actually worked on Ubuntu. I was like, holy cow, I can't believe that.
Kind of reminds me, there's a Aqua Teen Hunger Force episode where they get flooded with all these malware ads and he just keeps clicking on every one that comes up, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's my dad. My dad is Master Shake.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's good.
I couldn't believe it. Sorry. Totally stole the momentum of the
that's fine.
No, you're good. That's great. Love it. I am curious though, like, so PewDiePie de-Googling, like I haven't actually seen his video. I just have read a lot of stuff on it. Like, is he getting rid of YouTube? Because I feel like that's the last part of the whole piece, and he can't, like, it's really difficult to do that for him. Like, do you know if he's doing that, or is that a high question?
I don't know.
Yeah, like
PewDiePie.
he's got a big following on other. I'm sure he's got a big social media, so he could rebuild his base. Not that he's semi-retired, but it is interesting to get rid of, everything Google, but YouTube is just such a hard one. And so,
I mean, there is PeerTube.
So high tech, what is PewDiePie going to be doing with YouTube? Is he going to be trying to get away from YouTube now?
I haven't watched the video actually, but
No, none of us have watched the video.
I haven't either.
I just read the article, and the article doesn't mention anything about.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, it says except YouTube. I literally can't escape. So
Yeah,
I know, but
I figured he would not be getting rid of YouTube because he's got 110 million subscribers. We should have him on the podcast and ask.
That's kind of
Okay.
the dynamic for some people staying on Windows. It's a hostage situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know you
It's
should
designed
contact
that way.
Pewds though, because you're the Linux tuber.
Dude, I will. I'm gonna reach out to him right now.
Yes, but I think a lot of people can really trust PewDiePie's opinion on. Well, actually, can you really trust PewDiePie's opinion on Linux?
Yeah, I honestly believe he had one of the best videos on the topic of Linux. Like, it showed how much fun it can be, and that's why I use it, right? Like, I use it because it's enjoyable, and he just showed how, like, all of the enthusiasm he had for it, and how deep you can go down that rabbit hole, and I thought that it was fantastic.
Yes, but can you trust Xbox?
Can we trust Xbox? No, I don't think
No.
we can.
I think he
Because
can. I'm going to
Xbox-
be.
I have a long memory. I remember where Xbox kind of sold out PC gamers down the line. Where you started coming Microsoft, which control Windows. There was an era of all these exclusives on Xbox that they kept off Windows, and that was even part of the contract. And it's like, what the hell are they doing at that point? I get it, but that's where I feel like, okay, if you want to do that, then I think you should have antitrust regulation, or investigation at least, that you're setting
Yes.
up competing products against yourself.
That's a
Just like I've said multiple times on this podcast, you can't trust any big corporation. It's just how it is. They've got their stakeholders, which should include us, but is their investors and stuff like that, and that's who they're going to appease to. So, yeah,
yes.
that's my biggest take on this. You cannot.
So here's the crazy part. So Xbox recently just laid off over 9,000 employees, which is like, I believe 4% of their entire workforce. Still a lot of people though, and it's really the most unfortunate thing. Well, any layoff is unfortunate, really, but like 9,000 people, shit, man, I don't even think I know 9,000 people. That's way more people than
Yeah.
yeah.
That's like a decently attended concert. Like a very, very well attended concert, actually.
Yes, and among those are actual entire game studios being shut down, like The Initiative, which was responsible for developing, well, guess what? The Perfect Dark game. Now, I don't know how interested you guys were in the game, but I was vaguely interested.
Yeah. Perfect Dark was my favorite game on the N64. It was one of my favorite Xbox Live Arcade releases, and I am devastated that they canceled that game.
And
Even for me, like I liked Perfect Dark on the N64, but then like I didn't really care for anything else that came out. But this one looked really good. I was shocked that they killed this game. And it brings me back to StarCraft Ghosts, which was canceled decades ago. That's just like they promoted a game and then you're like really excited for it, and they just never released it. And I don't know if I want to put like any rules down or anything for them to have to release games that they're promoting, but I would like to see games come out even if they're not fully
killing
ready.
games mid-development.
Yeah, well,
The wild
I would
thing
just like to
about
play it.
this, the wild thing about their announcement here is that a lot of the games have been in development for like 6, 7, 8 years, the ones that they're canceling. And it's like, is this a matter of them just cutting the cord, or is this just like indicative of mismanagement at Microsoft?
Well, one thing I'm baffled by is was it like Hi-Fi Rush game do well? And then they're just like, okay, great. Now we're going to kill like, I thought that one was profitable and like had some acclaim, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, it was.
Well, Microsoft said that at first, but clearly it must have not made enough money for them to care that much about the studio.
Yeah, though. I mean, I don't know. I'm curious about what the thought process is if it is making money and winning awards, because like I think they said they wanted kind of a division that might be more indie and win some. Also, didn't I think I heard that they wanted like more presence in like Eastern markets, and that was a good game for that.
Yeah, they wanted more
So
Japanese developers, and Tango
yeah,
GameWorks was that perfect like
so
that.
it's like they're getting what they say they want. So yeah, let's kill it. That was kind of my understanding.
I think there is a leadership battle going on because
Yeah.
they bought a ton of developers, and then from my understanding, they were supposed to have a huge increase in subs for the Xbox Game Pass, but that did not really happen. And so their sales were a little underwhelming. And then I bet you some other leadership are a little bit higher than the one that had that initiative kind of stepped in. This is all me guessing, but like killed a lot of this stuff and like going through and just trying to make things profitable. And that's the problem, is that games don't work that way. If you have a game that is profitable and the studio is making it's making money, it's not losing you money, why shut it down? The next game could even be bigger. Part of it, I think, is that live action also drive to just, or not live action, sorry, live service too. Driving to really try to have a live service game that's going to be the next $1 billion game.
Yeah, I've heard stories about EA before where they, in the company culture, there was some developer there that they came up with a model for like a, lowish budget that could produce a respectable profit. And he was told that that's not how things work. They kind of want to, roll the dice on like a giant hit. And they're almost like not interested in like small wins. It's like all or nothing kind of mentality.
Yeah.
It's an investment mentality that's actually not great. It's actually caused a lot of issues in the other parts of the tech industry, is that they roll that. It's a form of gambling in some form or fashion where they want to hit big or it doesn't matter. But that's not how you develop a healthy portfolio. And so they're learning, but okay, they're not learning. They're seeing the results of that. We'll see if they actually learn, because I don't think
they've been around a while. I don't know. I mean,
Microsoft,
but they're suffering. They're suffering.
So there was also one crazy article. It's a LinkedIn post from Matt Turnbull, executive producer at Xbox Game Studios Publishing, and here's the quote. It says, "I've been experimenting with ways to use LLM tools to help with reducing the emotional and cognitive load that comes with job loss." Is that not crazy to you that he recommends using AI to like coddle you emotionally?
AI therapist.
AI therapist. Can we just use an AI to replace all these hired management people? I mean, what does a producer really
It's going to
do?
happen.
They
Here's
come
the
up with
funny
better
thing.
results.
The position that's easiest to replace most like right now is upper management or mid management. Funny enough.
So here's my question. Would you rather work for a company that's run by a bunch of incompetent leaders or a company run by a bunch of AI?
I don't like this answer.
Depends
but
on what the algorithm is. Yeah.
I'd rather work for Skynet, I think. I think they'd be nicer to me.
Plus, they don't need money.
That's brutal.
They don't need money. They don't need living expenses. They don't need housing. They don't need food, gas.
I don't like it's too dystopian, but
the thing is, one of them is a company run by a group of individuals that don't care at all about the people underneath them and have no emotion and only care about money, and the other are AI.
AI, which is more
and
ethical.
it would be following the bidding of the first group.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But it would be more it would be more kind of chaotic or incoherent. So maybe you could figure out how to squeeze between the cracks,
So
carve out something.
here are some prompts that Mr. Turnbull recommended. Oh, the post has been deleted from his
Wow.
LinkedIn since then. But here's one. Act as a career coach. I've been laid off from a quote role at video game industry. Help me build a 30-day plan to regroup, research new roles, and start applying without burning out.
So crap like this is why I play games, so I don't
Yeah.
focus on.
Dude, I'm just putting myself in this guy's like mindset. He's like, how can I help the people that I've ruined their lives? Oh, let's find out what AI recommends. Like, what are you thinking, bro?
AI. Oh,
is
they
just-
recommending AI to people. Wow, that's really helpful.
So this is just going to drive more
Microsoft,
union.
and Microsoft profits from the use of OpenAI. So
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
They are an investor.
they're selling the sickness and the cure.
See, here's my resume. Here's my current resume. Give me 3 tailored versions: one for AAA, one for a platform/publishing roles, and one for a startup/small studio leadership. I
Microsoft owns half of the studios in the West. So, like, what is he talking about? They've laid off most of the studios.
I know, but how these big companies work is if you get laid off, you can still get hired at another studio. They don't like repositioning people. It's if Google does it, it's a very super bizarre practice to not just allocate your developers. What they will do is they'll lay them off, and then they'll rehire them. They're fine rehiring them at another studio, but it looks better on the books.
There's one more terrible prompt.
Oh my god.
That
The
is
AI's
the
gonna
crazy.
have to know what you're good at. So, yeah, this is pretty dystopian, and this is going to drive for unionization. Like, I'm sorry, like, game industry, you're getting unionized like very soon with this type of behavior. There's no way.
Yeah. So one commenter in our comments has been accusing us of some pretty severe anti-Xbox bias, which I mean is totally fair. But at the same time, though, Xbox is doing this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I only have such resentment for modern Xbox because I am such a fan of original Xbox and like early 360 era.
Yeah.
Like I miss that era.
Yeah, like if you weren't a fan of Xbox to begin with, you probably wouldn't care all that much about the things they're doing to self-destruct, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, man. Xbox is crazy. Shit, there's so much.
Yeah, that always kind of baffled me is the naming too, like Xbox Series X. Like I mean, it's almost parody level at that point. Like,
oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would think you just want Xbox 3 or just Xbox Fusion or just something easy to identify.
How about the ROG Xbox Ally X?
I hadn't heard of that one.
It's
sorry.
ROG's new Xbox handheld. It's like the Ally, but it's the Xbox Ally X Series
like, why the
S
hell
Pro
would
Max.
You call that like Xbox Mini or something that like
Right.
everybody would understand. Yeah.
I mean, you missed
on
a part
the
of
go.
it. It's Asus Xbox Ally.
Asus,
Or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah. No.
Right.
Asus ROG
Of course.
Xbox Ally X. Oh my god,
Series S.
Series
still,
X.
I still cannot get over the name. Listen, it is the. I don't. Who decided this? Was it Microsoft or Asus?
That's par for the course for Microsoft, though. Like their
It's
naming
Microsoft.
conventions are so terrible.
Jesus Christ, man.
It's so bad. Like they're
Well,
just.
I heard for the Xbox One, that one was Steve Ballmer's project where he thought everybody was going to be calling it the One. You know, and like he had this kind of like,
Like Neo, like the one.
yeah, I think so. Like that's.
Oh my
He
god.
thought that, and then when people started calling it X Bone, that kind of backfired because
Yeah.
that's like, wait, this isn't what you know.
Dude.
I kind of dig X-Bone. I like X-Bone. My problem was even Xbox One was like, okay, this is stupid, but I just cannot believe that after the Xbox One, they went with Xbox Series X and stuff like this. Like they ramped up the
Xbox and
stupidity
Xbox
with the names.
360 kind of works. That
Well,
one kind of works.
What did you think they were going to call it? The Xbox One, too?
They could do it with the
Xbox
Xbox
One,
too.
2, 3
You can play with
Switch.
2 people. I don't know. No, that's the thing. Like
Xbox.
it is
2.
stupid, but like the more complicated you make the name, the more likely you're going to confuse the consumer and you're going to lose sales.
Yeah, like
So-
some mom wants to buy it for kids. Like, well, wait, what's an Xbox Series? Because they're gonna see the old Xbox One, Xbox Series. You know, what is this? You know,
It's very confusing, and that's why PlayStation's winning, and Nintendo. Like, because they're like, oh well, there's a Nintendo Switch, and then there's the OLED, which obviously is just a better screen. It's I don't get it. Oh well. Like, Xbox, I guess everything's an Xbox now, though. So
I think it was, Jesus, it was Vista or 7 where they made like a Windows 7 party to celebrate. It's like the whole thing. It was a marketing thing. It feels like it was filmed by aliens or written by, let's see, Windows 7.
Sounds
I can't
like
remember if it's
Microsoft.
Vista or yeah, Windows 7 launch party. That was it.
Yeah, to be fair, though,
It is surreal. Yeah.
To be fair, the Windows 7 was a massive improvement over Windows Vista.
It is, but this is like an aliens put together like a documentary about people having a social gathering. It is so bizarre, you know.
Yeah, man, that's just Microsoft C-suites at their best.
Yeah.
And
they went
honestly,
on that.
though, I think there are some calls to have Phil Spencer step down. What are your thoughts on Phil Spencer's leadership at Microsoft, or at Xbox specifically?
I think Peter Moore was the best head of Xbox, and they need to bring him back.
Was he the 360 guy? Where's he now?
He's at EA Sports, I think.
Oh.
Or he could be retired. I mean, that was like almost 30 years ago when he took over for Xbox.
Damn.
I don't like EA Sports. Like that doesn't give me a lot of hope. Or I just think Xbox needs needs new leadership personally.
Yeah,
if they're gonna
honestly,
survive.
Sony just got new leadership too, and it looks like they're doing a little better already. It's only been like a year or two. Like they just released Astrobot, and they're marketing the hell out of that.
Astrobot's so good. If they keep on going that direction, PlayStation's just gonna royally fuck Xbox, I think. And it just they're just gonna win. Because Astrobot's so good. If they can just release a new PlayStation Vita kind of situation where it's just like kind of like the Portal, but an actual handheld, I think they're gonna be on a huge winning trend.
On the topic of Xbox though, Sony released Helldivers 2 on Xbox, and some Sony fans are really pissed.
Sony fandoms alone are just toxic.
Yeah, but yeah,
well, I am glad the ratio of exclusives seems to be lower and lower these days compared to the past.
Agreed.
yeah. Dealing with fandoms is a true horror story, but have you seen this true horror story? So, how many of you guys watch anime?
I do.
I do too.
I don't.
What about you, Ross?
I've seen very little. I mean, just Ghost in the Shell, Akira, Princess Mononoke. Those are just really mainstream
Classics.
Stuff. Just like a
The
handful.
classics. Yeah, it's good. It's
Yeah,
good
just
stuff.
a handful. I'm not a big anime guy.
I have only ever watched the Animatrix, if that gives you any context.
Gardner, you got to get you into some more anime. The Animatrix is good, but there's more out there than just a Matrix spinoff. But anyways, Crunchyroll has been discovered using AI-powered translations. So, one of the biggest debates is subs versus dubs. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means watching it in Japanese with subtitles versus watching it in like English or German or Spanish or whatever language it is, right? And these subtitles feature multiple grammatical errors, and some subtitles start with ChatGPT said. Now in the document there are some screenshots. Are you able to pull those up, James?
Oh, geez. Yeah, sorry. I'm doing a horrible job of... Yeah, here we go.
It's all good, man. Yeah. So, look at that. It says ChatGPT said, when ich died... I'm not German. So,
Awesome.
So basically, here's my thing. A lot of people have issues with localizers because they quote-unquote mistranslate, like, because they want exact translation. but like they don't really want exact, and they claim they want AI to translate. But this is what happens when AI translates to a different language, and they don't do the work in like cleaning that shit up. Basically, there's like no human.
They can't even
oversight,
do
basically.
basic work.
Yeah, and one of them says,
I'm wondering if this is more like a disgruntled employee too putting in. This is what they said. This is what ChatGPT said. It's too bizarre.
We have no idea. They did this for a new series called Necronomico and the Cosmic Horror Story, which I haven't seen yet. I don't know what it's about. It looks very colorful, by the way, but I mean, shit, man. What the fuck? Is it incompetence or is it just malicious likeness?
This seems like it's just an automated thing. Like they're not even reviewing any of the results. They're just running maybe a script that they wrote to translate stuff.
Yep.
I'm sure they're reviewing it with AI.
AI are coming for, because if the company doesn't really care about a certain quality standard and just needs to just get anything out, then yeah, that's the sort of stuff that AI can take over on. Because if you don't care if your quality drops 20-30%, then yeah, AI can open up a lot of doors.
Yeah, funny story though. This isn't related to the topic at hand, but Crunchyroll started out as an anime piracy website where you could watch anime that were like subtitled by they're called fans. They're called fan subs. Yeah. I watched Naruto when I was a kid.
I did not know that.
With
That's
my
crazy.
with my older brothers. Yeah, they had Datebayo fan subs for Naruto when the Japanese only episodes were still, they weren't brought over here still, but yeah, that's basically why. They also had a pirated K-drama too back in the day as well. Like
so
Korean
you're
dramas.
saying like it started out by like taking the videos and they'd translate them, and now they're just like completely the opposite now.
Yeah, they
completely
went
paid,
legit, yes.
and they don't do any translations themselves.
Well,
they started going that way.
They uploaded the videos with like fan translations from people,
right?
So they didn't.
But still,
so
that's still something.
That's something. And Sony owns them now. They're owned by Sony.
Sony doesn't.
So
it is owned by Sony. It is very interesting.
Sony owns a lot of the anime industry in the West, like the translations and shit.
Crunchyroll owns a lot of it too, like and then
and Sony owns Crunchyroll.
Intrinsically, Sony. Yep.
Yeah.
I could go for a spicy crunchy tuna roll right now.
That does sound really good. Let's not talk about. So, I am curious about this. Like, I think automated AI's translations. Well, I don't even about translate. I know YouTube's rolling something out, aren't they? Like, you can translate videos into different languages now with YouTube. Is this just going to be a trend that's going to go into games? I'm assuming games also, probably some game studios do this too. But are we going to just like so if you watch subs, I'm not as big into subs just because I don't want to read. I usually distract myself. I usually do work and then distract myself with shows and stuff slightly. But the translation is very important because if you get it wrong, it really screws up the whole show, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm kind of used to really bad translations. As I've played a lot of like JRPGs that were brought over to the West. You know how it is. But I mean, you can point them out very easily if you know how to read. But here's the thing, though. They could have masked this whole situation had they had someone like read over it and then correct any bad grammatical errors or shit like ChatGPT said, assuming it wasn't some sort of disgruntled intern or some bullshit like that. I don't know, man. It's a crazy situation. Crunchyroll's president, Rahul Purini, he said in the past that there's no plans to use AI in the creative process and that they wouldn't use AI to impact voice actors. But, I mean, are translations not also part of the
I would say so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a lie. I think anyone that says that at this point, and I hate to say this, but as AI gets better, and I can promise you that AI has gotten drastically better over just a year alone.
Yes.
I don't think it's going to replace. They're going to try to replace jobs. They'll fail at this with certain jobs, but some jobs it will just replace. And if the company doesn't do it and they have competition, which Crunchyroll really doesn't. But some of these, like let's say games, then they might lose out sales. They might lose out to other to competition. So if they say they're not going to do it, they're just lying. They're thinking about it.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a terrible situation all
Yeah.
around. And I mean, at least they're not doing it for the dubs. But I don't watch anime dubbed, to be honest. It's just not a thing I do because
You're a purist.
I mean, I am kind of a purist, but it's also because it's just kind of how I've watched anime like almost my entire life.
Yeah.
Except for
I
like
don't
Dragon Ball
dub
Z.
stuff either.
Yeah, except for like Dragon Ball Z.
Subtitles.
I watched that on TV when I was a kid, and it was dubbed. But yeah,
Yep.
It's a very disappointing situation to see Crunchyroll go through. And it's not like I watch anime in Crunchyroll anyways, but I certainly won't be doing it even more.
Yeah, it's definitely boding also for the other industries like I mentioned. So with that, any other topics we wanted to cover, High Tech, or are we gonna call this? We gonna let Russ go?
We did skip a topic. I don't know if we have time to talk about it. Gardner, what do you think? Do we have time to talk? Do you have time to talk about it?
I gotta pick up Emily pretty quickly here.
Oh shit! Well,
Yeah.
I was just gonna go over it really quickly. So I'm gonna go over it really quickly and Nexus Mods requires age verification in the EU and UK for adult content. Adult content typically means like porn, but in this case, the definition of adult content goes even further than that. They include porn, extreme violence, harmful substances, suicide, self-harm, depression, body stigma, eating disorders, swearing or profanity, and sexualized, as they call it. It's a pretty big list. I don't know if I agree with all of them.
Yeah. I mean, it's their platform, and they're probably going by the law in the UK.
Yeah, it sounds like a legal thing.
You can be depressed if you're under 18.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad thing to go a little extreme sometimes, because as long as they're not like, as long as they're not getting rid of it, but they're putting it like behind an age verification system, then I'm a little bit more of being safe. But I also have kids, so I'm also like, I'd rather be safe, and they can just turn 18 and then they can play all they want. They're going to be over 18 most of their lives, so a few years won't kill them, I guess. I know it's a weird way to think about it, I guess, but
so here's something interesting. Have you guys ever seen any mods featuring eating disorders? I can't think of a single game that's ever done that, or any mod
I'm
that's.
wondering if they're gonna count stuff like eating rates and something like Oblivion or DayZ or something, where they're like, oh, okay, they're messing with the or you eat cheese to get health or something. I wonder if that's even gonna fall under this, actually.
I think eating disorders would probably be like a super skinny model, or maybe some stuff like that. But yeah, that's bizarre though. But is there a mod that's like that? Maybe like
no. But there is a feature in Metal Gear Solid 3 where you can rotate. Where I forget, it's a menu in the game. You can rotate the camera around to make Snake purge whatever he ate, in case he ate like a poisonous snake or anything like that.
Yeah, that's very important. That's not an eating disorder though. And I don't think they'd ever classify that.
Caught under the net.
It could fall into the net though.
It shouldn't, but yeah. I would because with Nexus Mods, you can get some very extreme mods, and so I agree. Like, how is this going to be handled? It will be interesting, but there are some pretty extreme mods out there, and I do think that this is important. But yeah, there's some open-ended questions like the eating disorders one is interesting.
Yeah,
body stigma,
swearing,
interesting.
Swearing profanity. There was a huge stink when YouTube tried to censor that shit like a while ago.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that needs to be censored in adult content. Swearing and profanity is not a big deal.
Plus middle schoolers swear all the fucking time. Sorry, I do too, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost feels like a religious thing almost at that point, but yeah. I don't know. I don't think it's bad, and once again, like I think a lot of it could actually, like, a lot of teenagers I think do get into the modding thing, and along with social media and this, I think could help them getting into some bad habits. But I'm also, you know, in my 30s, and I don't care that I lock out some kids from doing this, so from the mob. So I don't know. As long as it's not banned altogether. Yeah. So that's it. Anything else you guys want to say on this topic, or should we start calling it? Let's do this. Let's sign off. Ross, do you want to plug anything extra? I know we already plugged your channel and the movement, but anything more you want to do, or do you want to
that's
reiterate?
it. I'm kind of singular and focused these days. I'll be happy when it's done. So
Yeah, man.
stopkillinggames.com for info on how to sign the initiative.
Nice.
Yes.
Go
Good
sign
work,
for
by
it.
the way.
Yeah, go sign the position.
If you're eligible,
Like,
if you're eligible, don't. EU citizens only, though you can live anywhere, and you have to be at least voting age.
Yeah, man. Hope for the best, man. I know it's a hard fought battle, man, but I'm glad you're doing it, because I don't know if I would be able to do it if I started up.
I won't have a nagging doubt at the end of this, however it turns out. You know, you've probably had that feeling where, oh, if only I'd done this, maybe things would have gone differently. I'm not gonna have that. So
yeah, move forward, man. The battle may be won, technically speaking, but the war, I feel like we're in for. We'll keep updating the.
Yeah, but it'll be other people fighting it past my. I just needed it to cross that threshold, then that somebody else takes over.
I think I think it will set some good precedents, and I think it will continue with momentum, because I do think there's a lot of importance with these types of movements. So I think you're doing a great job.
I trust it.
You need to spend the rest of your life doing it.
No. I never wanted to do this. It's just it bothered the hell out of me. So
it needed to be done.
Yeah.
Well, good job. Yeah. So with that, let's call it. Let's let everyone go so they can go. I guess enjoy their lives on a nice Saturday. Thank you guys for watching. And let's peace out, I guess.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
All right, take care.
Later, guys.